no. Para mí,
Come on, can we move it on? That's it, baby.
Pero estos dos que viven contigo.
I know you're on a roll.
Bueno, pues Neil Browning es el primer hombre en recibir la vacuna contra el COVID en Washington. Él es un hombre de 46 años, es un ingeniero en redes de Microsoft y es un voluntario en este protocolo para probar la eficacia de esta vacuna. Y yo lo tengo ahora en la línea y lo saludo con mucho gusto. Neil Browning. Hi, Neil. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. All good. How's everything going around there?
We are still in a shelter-in-place, sort of lockdown and quarantine state. So it's still a little of a surreal world we're living in, but everything is good overall.
It is bizarre, surreal. It is. It is. What pushed you, Neil, to volunteer for the trial?
Well, because I live so close to where the research facility is and I'm healthy and in the right age group, I feel like it's my duty and that anybody else who had the same set of circumstances that I was in would be willing to do this and help out humankind.
How did they reach you? Or how was it? I mean,
it was through volunteering. They had an email address set up where you could send in your name and phone number, and they would contact you to collect information and see if you looked like a good candidate for the trial.
What has been the process to be a volunteer?
It was actually pretty long and in-depth. They went through and pulled all of my medical records to look at any illnesses, surgeries, anything that I'd had in the past, as well as documented my blood pressure. They took samples of blood. They went through and looked at all the chemistry in the blood to make sure my kidneys, pancreas, liver was all functioning well. My height,
all your organs,
blood pressure. Yes. One of the side effects of vaccination is that sometimes it can have a negative outcome on your pancreas, kidney, and liver. So they were very studious as making sure that they're being very thorough to get a baseline of what I looked like before so they could see if there was any changes after I was given the vaccine. So after
how many of you are volunteers in this vaccine? It's 13 of you, right?
There's 45 total, and I'm in a group of 15. There are 3 groups of 15, and each are given a different amount of the vaccine for testing.
Okay. Are there any risks? You were told of any risks?
Yes, they said that there could be as slight a thing as mild fever, runny nose, aches and pains and fatigue, all the way up to nausea, vomiting, or you could have a really bad reaction where the injection actually took place if you've ever had problems getting vaccines before.
Have you had any of the symptoms?
No, the only symptom that I had with both shots, I obtained my first one March 16, and they did a follow-up in mid-April, April 16th, and gave me the second dose. It was like when you go to the doctor to get a vaccine or a flu shot now, the arm is slightly sore in the morning, and it goes away within 10 minutes of waking up and moving around and getting your blood moving.
Other than that, I mean, you've had no symptoms. Nausea, nothing, fever?
None that I can tell. And they have done multiple blood draws on about a weekly basis where I have to drive back in for the research to take some blood and send it off for a lab for analysis. I actually have my next one tomorrow morning that will actually also look for white blood cell count and whether or not my body's producing the immune response that they're looking for, which means the vaccine would be a successful one.
How many shots are you given? I mean, it's going to be 3 tomorrow.
And just the third one in mid-March and the one in mid-April.
And that's it?
Yes. Then it's a year-long study because for a vaccine to be successful, the antibodies need to stay in the blood for a good year to give you that immunity during that period of time. If it was only good for a couple of months, people would need to go back to the doctor every few months and get another injection for a booster. And that's not an ideal circumstance because so many people would get tired of doing it and stop, and then we would have another outbreak.
I see. Now, what do they actually introduce the COVID virus into your body, or what is it that they
No.
introduce you?
This is completely new technology, and the company that's done this has never brought anything to market. So they're very young and new. So basically, it's a section of RNA, which is like a blueprint of instructions that tells your body's DNA what to do. And this specific RNA goes into my lymph node in my lymphatic system, and it instructs my cells there to produce the little spike protein structures that we've all seen on the representation of what the COVID-19 virus looks like under the microscope. The idea is that my body should see these, and even though they're my cells, they look different and like they shouldn't belong there, so my body should attack them. And in doing so, it will learn how to produce antibodies that can attack those spike structures on the outside of the virus, which is what the virus itself uses to attack the body. So that should help neutralize if my body is doing the immune response and creating these antibodies to attack those spike structures. If I'm ever exposed, my body should see, instantly recognize, and react quickly to isolate and destroy those cells before I can become compromised and start having symptoms.
Are you in isolation, or where are you? Are you at home?
I'm at home. I've been working from home since late February. My employer was one that was pretty quick to encourage everyone that wasn't super critical on site to just go and work from home. The guidance we have now is that we're going to continue doing that in at least the United States through October. We are opening some countries slowly where we have offices that have things better under control. But for right now, my guidance from the Research Institute was just to limit my exposure as much as possible, but basically just to follow the guidelines that my local, state, and federal government have given, which is shelter in place, wear a mask if you're in public, do not visit friends and family, just whoever you immediately live with is safe. And if you do need to go out, make sure it's for a real reason and only go to the stores and pharmacy at off-peak times, say early morning, late evening, so that you don't have to encounter as many people.
And I guess they keep you in observation all the time. I mean,
yes.
They give you a follow-up all the time, every day, or they call you?
They did call me the first 24 hours and the second 24 hours after each injection. After that, it's weekly follow-ups for blood draw. After I get my next one tomorrow, it'll go 1 month until I get another visit. And then it will go every 3 months through the end of the year. And those follow-ups will be just to determine how long the antibodies are in my blood.
How will they know if the vaccine was successful?
That's a great question. So it's all on paper saying that it should work when they see the antibodies that match what those look like in someone who has recovered from COVID-19. Honestly, a challenge study would be the only way to do this, which typically happens in phase 3. We are currently in phase 1 for my trial. The company Moderna, who produces this vaccine, and Kaiser Permanente, the research institute and hospital organization here in the United States that's working with the CDC and the NIH towards this vaccine, are looking at moving to phase 2 in the next month or so. And then they're hoping for phase 3 by late summer. Phase 3 will introduce people to an active virus and make sure that all of this that looks good on paper actually works in the real world and it produces the desired effect.
Are you in touch with the rest of the volunteers? Did you ever meet them, or you never get to see them?
I did meet one of the volunteers a few times who had the same schedule at the clinic I did, and we've stayed in touch. And then recently through Twitter, I actually met up with someone who is in the third of the 315 person groups for this study I'm in. And he is actually somebody who was given the very large dose, which was 10 times what I was injected with.
10 times?
Yes.
What's the
So my dosage is 25 micrograms. What they did is they staggered it with 2-week intervals. So they gave the 25 microgram low dose batch to people, and they waited 2 weeks to get blood tests back and to get responses from the people to make sure that it was safe. And then they went to 4 times to 100 micrograms. And then they waited 2 weeks to make sure there was no ill effects from that group. And then they onboarded the 250 microgram dose people to make sure that that wasn't a problem as well.
So you've had no physical reactions whatsoever. That's what you said.
No, and the person who I've been in contact with,
The one you met, yeah,
very high dose, has also said he felt a little dizzy and out of sorts after his second dose, but that cleared up within a day, and he's had no other issues other than the very slightly sore arm as what I described.
Were you ever scared of doing it, Neil?
Of course. My fiance is a nurse, so she and I talked it over and did our research to find out exactly what this entailed and how risky it was. We already knew the reward could be great for mankind, and in looking at it, she decided that it was safe enough to go through it. And the doctors at the Research Institute also said that if there's going to be any very bad response, it's going to happen near immediately. As a result, the dosages were 3-hour appointments where they made sure we were very healthy right upon entry. They drew some blood before to give them a good sample of what it looked like before I had the injection. And then we were required to stay on site for just over an hour afterwards to make sure that we were okay. That's also why they did the 24 and 48-hour phone call follow-ups with us afterwards to make sure all was well. But they said that if we're not seeing anything within about a week, it should be a non-issue.
Okay.
So for that first week, I was kind of reluctant to think, well, I guess nothing's going to happen, even though I hadn't felt ill. But after a week had passed, I knew that we were in the clear and there shouldn't be any problems.
Now, your nurse, you said it. Your fiance, she's a nurse. Is she working right now? She lives with you?
Yes, she does live with me and she works. Thankfully, she's not on the front lines.
She's not in the front line.
Yes, she gives chemotherapy to cancer patients. And since those patients have no immune systems due to the chemotherapy that they're taking, it's very important that she stays as healthy as possible to not make those people who are very vulnerable sick. So her hospital does a very good job of making sure that the people who are in the cancer area are well shielded and aren't exposed.
We've heard such terrible stories, about the personnel, the medical personnel, what they've seen in hospitals, how people die. Have you heard about that? And has she heard about that? I mean, her colleagues and all.
Yes, it's definitely a real issue globally, as well as here in the United States. Some of our worst areas have been in the New York City area. Strangely enough, the first case in the United States was here in my state of Washington. The first death in the United States was here in Washington, and the first outbreak, which came from a cluster of nursing homes where older people that need medical assistance live. And our governor reacted very quickly. He closed the state down. He eliminated public sporting events, gatherings. Restaurants are only allowing takeout or curbside pickup. The schools are closed, both public and private, for months now. And I think that reaction was the right one. We went from number 1 in the country for infected cases all the way down to, I think we're 18th now. So our state has not had the problems where there's been a lack of ventilators or a need for emergency hospitals set up with tents on football fields and things like that. We've been very lucky in that respect. However, my fiance did do a volunteer shift on one weekend where they made sure she stayed in back and was not exposed directly to patients. And her job was to put together bags with the test kits and all the gloves and masks that the first responders need to use.
The whole set, the whole thing.
Right. She was putting the kits together for the people who would be exposed. And she said it was a nonstop stream. It was a little scary, and how many people were coming in that were coughing and sick and not feeling well.
Yeah, it's you said it so good. Like, it's surreal. It's a surreal moment for all of for the whole world. Yeah. Now you have children, right?
Yes, I have 2 daughters, and my fiance has a daughter.
And what did they say? I mean, what did they think when you told them you were going to be a candidate for the vaccine and you were
So
getting
they
your
are
shot?
ages 8 and almost 12 for my girls, and her daughter is 9. And at first they didn't really understand that it was that big of a deal, because we make sure that they get their flu shots every year, and we make sure they have their immunizations so they can attend school and are safe. And they just thought, okay, well, dad's, going to get a shot. But then they start seeing articles on TV and newspapers and magazines, and they realize, especially my oldest, how big of a deal this is. And so,
You were all over.
right. So she did a report in school and asked if she could include me, and sent a link to one of the stories. And the teacher had no idea. And she said, "That's your father?" And she says, "Yeah, I'm not trying to brag or anything. I just think that because this is a big topic that we're all talking about in school, it can help." So they've been very humble, and I'm glad of that. I let them know that this is not me. This is 45 other people doing this. And it's a whole group of people that are not seen behind the scenes working at Moderna and at Kaiser Permanente that are up at all hours. They send me emails on weekends, late at night, early in the morning. The team is working nonstop to get this moving.
Now, other than your fiancé being a nurse, you have no relation with the scientific or medical community, right?
No, not directly.
I mean,
My mother is a retired registered nurse, so I grew up exposed to medical terms in the hospitals and things like that. And I actually worked for about a year in my early teens in an emergency room. So I have some hands-on practical experience, but no formal education in that field.
okay, because what do you do for a living? You are an engineer, right?
Yes, my
It's
job at
yeah.
Microsoft is to our team manages firewalls and VPN devices for Microsoft globally. So we've had to rapidly scale and pull in a lot of people and hours when our workforce went from 30 to 40% working from home to over 100,000 people worldwide suddenly needing to work from home, and building that capacity out in a quick order.
What have you learned through all this process? Yeah.
That's a great question. I think mostly we take for granted how much community we have until we miss that. Just the simple things of being able to go out and get a haircut, or you forgot one thing, so you just run to the grocery store and pick up that one item. Now it's more of a thoughtful process of, is it worth risking my life potentially to go out and get one item for this recipe that I don't have, or should I just wait until the end of the week and do something else in the meantime? Not being able to help support local businesses, going out to dinner, going wine tasting, just some of the simple things that were taken for granted are now something I don't think I'm going to take for granted again. It's been very difficult feeling like you're cooped up and can't get out. And I think that's another issue that's also a risk, because we are looking at, here in the United States, at several states whose governors have chosen to partially open the state back up,
Mhm.
but their numbers are still climbing. And I'm not sure that that's the right response, because friends that I have that live in other areas of the country have told me stories about how a week ago, most people wore masks in public. And now that the governor has said everything's okay, they've just stopped doing that. And they're all hanging out in each other's backyards and going to each other's homes. And it's very fearful that there's going to be another second wave as a result of being too relaxed too soon.
I hope this is not, you don't think this is a bad taste question, but do you get paid for this?
No, that's a very fair question. When I was going through the initial paperwork, they were very cognizant about stating in it that this is something I'm doing at will. I can leave at any time. There's not any compensation for this. When the final paperwork came through, though, they indicated that they were given funding by the NIH and that they were going to give participants $100 per visit to the clinic. So that's not a very large amount. I think they do that because if they pay too much, you risk targeting less advantaged people to do this just to make money. But
Just to make
also,
money, yeah.
right. But also, I understand it's taking time out of my day, and my employer's been very awesome about just making sure that if I need to go, I can put things on hold and pick them back up later because what I'm doing is helping mankind. Not everyone is going to have that flexible schedule. So I think some of the intent of the money is to offset things like your time, your travel expenses, parking downtown in Seattle, and just the inconvenience factor.
How long have you been at home already? It's been 2 months already?
Over 2 months now, yes.
And it's still locked down, right? The city.
Our governor partially removed restrictions a week ago this past Tuesday. So some parks are open. Outdoor sports like fishing and golf are allowed, but you need to walk, or only people who live in the same household can be in a golf cart. And you can go out running on trails and hiking in the woods, but at all times you need to keep at least the 6-foot distance between people.
Now, other than that, you can do everything. You can exercise and you can do whatever you want to do. Is that okay?
You can go out to these parks and things like that and outside, but restaurants are still closed. Movie theaters are still closed. Everything is still pretty much locked down. Our children.
What about you, Neil?
online
Do you have
school
any
programs.
restriction of exercising, drinking, or whatever?
No, there's no restrictions. I mean, a lot of people will jog around their neighborhood or work out at home. I know that I've seen stories saying that liquor sales have been up since people are at home. I'm not sure how much that weighs against what people would have done in restaurants and how well that's tracked, though.
No, but about you specifically, because of the vaccine, did you have any restriction about exercising or whatever?
I did have restrictions, but not about exercising. I'm not allowed to donate blood for over a year. I'm not allowed to travel outside of the United States for over a year. I need to restrict my exposure to areas of the country that are known to be outbreak areas to try and make sure that I don't contract this, because it could change or invalidate the data that they're trying to track with this program I'm in. And if you're female, you can't get pregnant during this time. But otherwise, I can't use drugs, but I can drink alcohol and I can exercise, and everything else is completely normal.
Well, you look great, and I hope you.
Thank you.
And maybe if you're so generous, we can be in touch and see how you're doing, and give a follow-up also to the audience and see how you're doing.
Absolutely. That sounds great.
Thank you so much. Keep safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Adela. You too.
Take care. Bye-bye. Nice to meet you, Neil. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you on behalf of all mankind. And we cross our fingers. We cross our fingers.
We're very hopeful. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye.